a tutti e benvenuti.
Hello.
Hello.
Vanakkam.
Hello to everyone listening in. I hope you all are having a wonderful day or night. Welcome to the first episode of the World in You podcast. Today we are launching our special series, A Day in the Life of, in which we will explore individuals' cultures and the impact it has left on them today. By taking you all on this adventure with us, we aim to create more cultural awareness and help gain a better understanding as well as a greater appreciation for everyone around the world. My name is Sushmita Sundaram, and I am a rising junior in high school from California, USA. Right now, I am very excited to talk with our special guest, Dr. Lata Ravichandran. Dr. Lata has worked in the Sri Ramachandra Medical Institute in Chennai, India for 30 years as a licensed pediatric and adolescent doctor. That being said, let us now hear her introduction.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lata Ravichandran. I'm a pediatrician and an adolescent consultant, and I've been working at Sri Ramachandra Institute of Higher Education and Research for the past 30 years. I'm both a practicing pediatrician and an academician.
That's great. It's wonderful to finally meet you. So, what are some of the most common issues you see in your community as a doctor? And what do you think our society should do to help mitigate those issues?
I belong to a community that is in a developing country, India. So, in India, the population is very high, and the children contribute a very major component of this community. Most of the children there, they go through a lot of problems. Age-wise, it varies. Very young children, infants and neonates, they face the problem of infections, and they have both communicating and non-communicating diseases that are coming. And in the adolescent age group, it's more of, as in the rest of the world, more of suicide, violence and road traffic accidents. But when we consider the age group from 0 to, let's say, 19, we divide them into 0 to 1 month as neonates, 1 month to 1 year as infants, 1 to 3 years as toddlers, 3 to 5 years preschool, 5 to probably 9 years as the school children, and the pre-adolescent between 8 to 10, then 10 to 19 is the adolescent age group. Younger the children are, they are more prone for infections and nutrition related problems. India is still a developing country, and because of its diversity has got one extremes of poverty on one side, and also the kind of nutritional problems like obesity. So while in the lower socioeconomic group we see more of malnutrition, nutritional deficiencies, the same like in undernutrition. When it goes to the other extreme, we see malnutrition in the form of obesity or weight. It's also a part of the non-communicable diseases. Still, infections are a very big contributor to the morbidity and mortality that is happening in the age group 0 to 5 years.
And what do you think our society should do to help mitigate those issues?
See, in India, when we take the pediatric age group and the adolescents, the most important is to create an awareness and health education among the community. Prevention is better than cure, and India has always had its bet on the vaccine. Vaccine preventable diseases are the ones which are the major killers in the children, and vaccine immunization have really been a great step in India to prevent infection rather than to mitigate or to treat infections. So the immunization program in our country is really very, very vigilant, and it takes care of most of the vaccine preventable disease. So prevention by health education, and second is by promoting the primary prevention in form of immunization. And third thing is to conduct training camps to identify nutritional problems. While there is a lot of diversity in India, the health system is also constructed in such a way that it is trying to reach the remotest part of India. We have a primary, secondary and tertiary level care, but still accessibility is a challenge in many of the places because of the local beliefs and customs, and also the what I would say is the beliefs that prevent them from accessing the healthcare. And local practices are sometimes being considered by the people. So there needs to be a lot of education that needs to happen and awareness that has to be created.
I completely see that because these are all issues that need to be helped as like a community to be solved. And I think that would be definitely like the prevention and the vaccines and everything that's definitely going to help mitigate those issues. So the second question, how do you think your culture impacted your decision and pathway to becoming a doctor?
Yeah, now I'm 30 years as a practicing pediatrician. When I actually was in the high school and the decision about going into the medical school, I belong to a middle class family which did consider telling if I'm going to educate a female or a girl child, then there would be a lot of expenses incurred for a marriage, whether we should really do it. And medical school is a long duration, even in India, while though it may be a few years lesser than when compared to the United States, still it's a long run process. So my parents did have a lot of discussions whether putting me in a medical school would incur more expenses, and if the duration is long, and how it would influence my marriage and settling in family. Basically, my entry into the medical school was because I had scored a very good score and was the topper in the class, and acquiring the seat was very easy because there was an entrance exam. However, still in my family, it's a family of engineers, and I was the first one to enter the medical school. So there was a lot of thoughts how this would influence my future family life. So my parents did think about two things. Being a girl child, this long duration influence the time of a marriage and settling in family. And second, the expenses that because we belong to a middle class family, whether they would be able to sustain. These were the two things that was actually impacting my career path as a doctor.
Wow, and then you still pursued the medical pathway?
That I should thank my parents, because they did not stop with the discussions alone. I had few of my relatives who were already in the medical field, so they went exploring and talking to all of them who did advise them that it was a very good thing that you have to put your daughter in the medical school. And that's not easy to acquire a seat in the medical college, especially in India.
And today you think it's probably changed since then, probably like India's like encouraging more women definitely.
It's entirely, it has changed. In my class of 180, we had 1/3 girls and 2/3 were boys. But today I'm actually the head of the Department of Pediatrics, and I noticed that today out of the 250 students, we have 200 students who are girls and the rest only boys. So there is a change. So most of the girls want to go to the medical school, and I'm also amazed because certain specialties like surgery, orthopedics, which were considered to be male dominated, are now being filled mainly by female candidates. So that shows the change, and these girls are doing extremely well, and they don't only look at opportunities within India. They are taking the USMLE Step 1 and Step 2, and many of them are here in the United States. My own batchmates and subsequently my own students are all over United States today. So that is the change that has happened over the years.
And that's genuinely amazing, because like that just shows how our society, especially in India, like you were saying, has really grown to be more accepting of certain pathways and careers, and has like kind of, just allowed more space for women to explore their interests, their passions. It's amazing.
There's also one more reason why this happened. Initially, the number of seats that for the medical school was very, very limited. But now India has undergone a big revolution in the medical education, and it has moved on to a competency-based medical education. That's the past 20 years of evolution that has happened, and opened up many medical schools and looking into the standards of medical schools, accreditation. And today the National Medical Commission has also been recognized by the World Federation Medical Education, so as to set its benchmark or standards at par with all the global community.
Wow. You said you've been a doctor for over 30 years. That's correct, right? First of all, it's wow, amazing. And second, in all of those years of working in the medical field, what are some of the practices or strategies that have been practiced in our society that you believe are positively impacting the field of medicine today?
Actually, we have to consider this as into three triangles. One is the actual students community, who are the prime stakeholders in the medical education. Second is the patient community, who are the outcomes of this training and the impact it has on the patient community. And third is the actual medical fraternity, which it talks about the whole set of people who are involved in the creation of these medical schools and the standard of education. So all these three things have undergone a lot of change. If you see today, the students are now wanting to go into medical schools and not stop with only being a general doctor, but they are moving on to become specialist and super specialist. India is a very huge population. When we consider 20 years ago, the doctor population ratio, so much disparity was there. And the disparity is not only in the doctor people ratio, but also in the distribution of the doctors between the rural, suburban and urban areas. Most of the doctors were concentrated on the urban and the developed areas, but the rural area was still also having a lot of problem in accessing the healthcare and the kind of doctors that were there. But now, if you see, that distribution is more or less getting addressed, because the number of doctors who are coming out every year, the number is more than almost 10 times more than what it was 20 years ago.
And do you think that big change occurred due to like any specific medical strategies or like opportunities for individuals?
The main thing is the Medical Council of India has taken it on itself to improve the standards of medical education. I mean, I've been a part of that change, because when I was 20 years ago, the doctors of the future, how could have they been trained, was the question that was raised, and all the medical fraternity put together, we worked on doing a curriculum as well as a faculty development, which went as a national-wide effect. And now it has created 618 medical schools with minimum standards and with a curriculum that is almost standardized throughout India.
So you think like the actual medical facilities and the educational department has definitely
as part of the accreditation, it also involves the having a relook at the infrastructure being upgraded and looking at the several learning environments which could be offered differently for producing an immersive learning experience for the students. For example, if the students today, we have enough patients and enough hospitals, but then with 618 medical colleges, we have to have a particular standard simulation-based education, virtual reality. These are all some of the newer learning environments that have been created in the medical schools to give them an immersive learning experience.
Wow, yeah. And definitely it's created such a huge impact on the medical field.
Created. Yes.
Yeah, so then on the contrary, I would like to know, what are some specific practices or strategies that you think need to be improved upon in order to help benefit the field of medical? Like things that still need improvement.
Okay. Yeah. From the patient point of view, now there is a lot of change. Every person has to have an access to the medical care. And that medical care, unlike the United States, the medical insurance is still not gotten a big way in India. So there needs to be a proper medical insurance facility for every citizen of India, towards which the current government is working towards it. In fact, the creation of the Aadhaar identified patient identifiers are being created so that every patient will have an access to the healthcare. The second is the quality of the doctors. Now, the quality of the doctors have been challenged, and there is a several accreditation process every hospital is undergoing so that they provide a high quality healthcare. The third is the transformation of the medical education. Ours is an important arena where patient care is impacted by training. It all happens in the same arena. So if training is not okay, there is no optimal patient care. So this convergence has been taken as an important quality issue, alignment with what the WHO goals is, transforming the healthcare education. We have taken it on the real Medical Council, or the National Medical Commission has taken that as an important goal and has improved the medical training so that the transformation process happens and the quality training results in optimal patient care and quality patient care.
And you think that's like very missing in the medical field?
Yes, that was the major gap when we considered 20 years ago, and I wouldn't say it is totally built, but that is where we are working.
And that has to do also with like the educational pathways, right? Like they have to fix like the way they're teaching the teaching
and learning has changed. The teaching and learning has changed. The entry into the medical school is now by a strict entrance exam, and as they're very difficult, and that is what we call it as the NEET exam, and that allows people who are really having good aptitude as well as the knowledge to get into the medical school. So initially it was through interview basis, but now there is a nationwide single window national entry test which the students have to qualify if they have to get into the medical school.
And you think the NEET is like a good way of doing that, or
It is a good way of doing it.
But after the students get into the medical field, you think the problem is with the training, right? They should start making it more proper and more helpful.
So now, that's what I said. The National Medical Commission has set in a process by which even to give an okay for a medical school, that they have to demonstrate a certain set of standards. The consistently inspections are happening to make sure such an standards are maintained. Not only that, throughout the year, the medical schools have to self-review their own processes and submit reports, which is being reviewed by the National Medical Commission. And if there is any discrepancy, they indicate to us, and unless standards are maintained, the recognition is at stake.
And which can affect the entire, So in our present world today, students go through several years of medical school before being able to work in an actual job. So now the way that I think most students are learning the actual content of medicine is through reading and memorizing various textbooks and then being tested on their ability to understand and apply all that knowledge towards real life situations. However, many medical students are believing that this switch from what they're reading word for word in their textbooks to what they're actually expected to be able to do in the hospital is like a very difficult switch for them. And I know like that's a lot of information to take in, but what is your stance on the traditional techniques our current society is using to educate the future leaders of medicine?
I would like to repeat that the current medical curriculum, which has been changed now, has specifically addressing this. Let me explain a smaller definition. When we call about a professional education, it is sound knowledge and application of sound knowledge. You can't be without a knowledge, but you must know how to apply the knowledge to practice. So this is the conversion that we have to do into a medical student. I'll give you an example. When I was a medical student, my entry was first into a dissection room, where I had to see the dissection of a dead body and actually see the different structures to learn. But my final practice area is only in the hospital with the patients. So the current curriculum is looking into this and changed it. The first day the student enters only into the hospital. While the anatomy is important, now the kind of instruction has changed to what is the need to learn this anatomy for you to help in practice. So that connect is being given because we have now introduced newer methodologies and teaching learning strategies. So the strategies that have been used is the early clinical exposure. When I was a medical school, I did anatomy, physiology, basics. Then only I entered into the clinical side to see the patients after 1.5 years. But now it's not so. Day one, the student goes to the hospital and there is an early clinical exposure. So this early clinical exposure tells them, I am reading the basic sciences is only because I need to know these structures for this particular disorder that I'm learning. So that connect is being given even from day one. So the early clinical exposure, orientation program, the foundation course, these all I never went through, but the current
and that's what they're doing today.
They're doing it today.
And you think it's very helpful
it's
because
very
they're going from the basics to that.
Yeah.
But then I think a lot of the students, what they complain about sometimes, but definitely in US, there is more like in person. They go to the hospital in their medical school and actually go to the patients and perform on them. However, I feel like some of them also, like the way they learn is the textbook memorizing and all of that, right?
So it's let me tell you, the domains of learning are knowledge, skills, and attitudes. There should be a converge or equal of this, and of course, communication. Though it's a part of the skill, I would like to take it out separately as communication. These are the 4 domains that we have to train the students. Yes, students have to have knowledge, but when they are tested, the testing should be on application of that knowledge. I will give you an example. We start with cell biology. We tell them that this is mitosis and this is meiosis. But then we take an example of a Down syndrome and say, look at this child. What is happening in this child? While there is a meiotic non-disjunction, we say in meiosis there is a problem. That's why the child is like that. But that is very, very exciting for a first year students because when they know the abnormality, they learn what is normal. So it is easy for them to remember. So that kind of, and what we call it as an application, is what we have to stimulate in the student. Cognitive is not only about recall. It is, and highest level of cognition is to apply that knowledge. and to also critical thinking, as well as you have to create the problem solving abilities. So that will come only if I say you're reading this is only because tomorrow when you're practicing, this may be the problem that you're encountering, or there may be no problem that you have to say that they are normal. So even to diagnose normality, you must have known what the abnormality is.
Which is why books are very important. Textbooks and memorizing.
Textbooks, it's not memorizing. Again, I'm saying it's about getting that knowledge to be applied. Today, I'm reading the structure of a cycle is not that for me to describe a cycle, but then to write a cycle. That's the difference.
And then I think previously you were mentioning that there's like medicine that's also gone to newer technological ways, like virtual reality or something, right? So do you think it would be very helpful if students start to explore virtual reality more in their medical pathways?
Actually, the bigger basket is called as simulated learning. When I was talking about the three corners of stakeholders in medical education, the patients, the students, and the medical fraternity. These are the three important stakeholders. The patients are the ones who are actually driving the whole thing. Nowadays, in India, the population is huge, but now the awareness is more that the patient may not want to be used for a teaching unless they permitted for it. So in such situation, how do I give the same learning experience for every student? Which means every student who go through the medical school should have this similar kind of a learning experience. I may get an opportunity to see a patient today, but may not another student. How do I give an uniform or a minimum standard for all students is by a simulated environment. This simulated environment could be either in form of standardized patients, where patients are trained to communicate, or it may be in form of real simulators who are mimicking like a situation like a road traffic accident or a cardiac arrest. That's a simulation. Or it could be a virtual reality, which is a kind of a simulated environment. These are all the immersive learning experience. If you take a learning and to fly, a pilot goes through a lot of this simulation. In fact, the aircraft training first started this simulation experience. So they do it before a pilot actually, flies a plane. So nowadays, we have to give that minimum experience to all the students. However, apprenticeship of learning and they working with or shadowing a particular physician gives the actual identity to them and transforms them from a physician who does to being that physician. So that is why this long duration is needed and more time for the students to be spent in the hospital and with the patients.
The real life interaction and understanding. And that's also why you were saying, in addition to the reading in the textbook and then applying it into the hospital, maybe you think it'd be a good idea, like you were saying, the stimulation. Students are able to shadow more doctors and see these stimulations and even learn through virtual reality, okay, this is where the patient's hand is, this is where the heart is, I'm going to go in that. It's going to be easier to see through virtual reality, like I know you're practicing today. So do you think that would be very helpful as well?
Absolutely. So it's not about kind of learning environment that we can produce almost to mimic the near life situation so that they have that immersive learning. However, they have to go and put their hands into the field to know what exactly it is, because every patient is different from the other, and that comes by practice, years of practice. If somebody who says 30 years of practice, that's what you identified me, it is my own experiences that have given me an ability to handle patients.
Wow, this entire conversation has been so informational and inspirational. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and thank you to all the viewers listening. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can leave a comment. And thank you.
Thank you very much.